Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Deb Talks podcast. Today we have Moreah with us again, and we are recording episode 3 of the Course in Miracles. And today we are going to talk ego versus spirit. Now, this is a huge subject, but we're going to try and nail it down in 30 minutes as much as we can. And of course, Moreah is going to use her wisdom that she has accumulated over the years through being a student of the A Course in Miracles. So without further ado, Moreah, please, if there's still some people who don't know you, just give us a little brief introduction.
Hi, well, welcome. Thanks for having me again on the program with you. Deb. I love to talk about Course in Miracles, and my journey with the Course started many, many years ago in the mid-'80s. And I've been a student of the Course in Miracles. And I've said to you, I've said to other people over the years, it's a precious gift that we have, because if we have an opportunity to speak with an enlightened being that has experienced, time on earth and yet is fully actualized and aware, who wouldn't want to do that? And of course, yes. The Course in Miracles was scribed, but the author truly is the entity we used to know as Jesus. So very valuable. And today's conversation is about spirit and ego. And we can talk about that because you and I both understand this very well, but we want to obviously speak at a level that makes it very palpable for our listeners. So yes. For me, it became really clear from a very young age that I had two voices in my head. And one was very destructive, the voice of the ego, and it encompasses itself with the personality, and it identifies very strongly with us as a body. And then I also was very aware of a soft, gentle guiding voice within me, which I always called from very young, the little voice. And the little voice was what some people call your higher self. In the Course in Miracles, it identifies as the voice of the Holy Spirit. Which is the aspect of the Trinity being that we all are a part of, that can speak to us and guide us very directly in our lives. So let's talk about that.
Oh, wow. That's a huge conversation to have. So, I mean, like when I break it down to spirit and ego for myself, spirit seems to be that thing that we can see, touch, and feel, but we all know it's there. Spirit is also sometimes referred to as, like in the Eastern philosophy, as Atman, or just, and some people talk about just an energy. Some people talk about soul. So all these things seems to be the thing that you can touch, feel, and taste, but you know that there's something greater than the body that is making this whole universe work. And then, of course, we have this thing called ego. And to me, in my experience, what I've recognized with ego is it's literally that thing that separates me and if there's other people, right? It's always been that, oh, my ego gets out of whack when somebody does something to me that I don't like, or if I don't get how I like it. Or so somehow for me, ego was always about protecting, in a way, my point of view and how I like things. But then there's also another way of looking at ego that Freud talked about, right? So the ego and so on. And then there's also the other part of ego where you can say, oh, look at that guy or that girl, they bragging about something. So that can also be ego. So ego is also something that can mean different things for different people. Right. And so how do you think can we become more aware of what actually is the ego and why the ego is there?
Well, years and years ago, I heard somebody make, and I can't remember who it was, but I heard them use the phrase ego. It stands for edging God out. I thought,
okay, really, edging God out.
So for me, I know that well, let's talk about what the Course in Miracles says. The Course in Miracles tells us that the ego was formed as a result of this crazy mad idea that we had, which emerged first. Consciousness was first. That was the first split. The Course in Miracles says, before consciousness, all was all. You just simply knew what you were, not as a physical entity, but as light and being everywhere. And then it calls it the tiny mad idea crept into the thought of God that said, well, what if I wasn't what I am? And the result of that, which happened over millions of years, as we know it as time goes, formed the idea of us not being what we are, which is the ego. So it is a false idea of what we are. And the ego always loves to identify itself with form, with body. But it's absolutely necessary for us to hold egoic thoughts in our minds. Can only happen when we disassociate from what we are as wholeness, as one. And so, as you pointed out, the ego is always about self importance. It's always me versus you. It's always pointing to judgment. It's pointing to its defenses. It wants to protect its belief systems, which are always based on separation. So the really, in many ways, the whole world and the way we see the world operate is all ego, not only the individual egos, but the collective of our egos. And as we know from our conversation on relationships we did last week, the ego is out to destroy our relationships. It has no desire to foster union and love and compassion and grace. It wants defense.
Yeah. And that's kind of funny, because you would think like people, when they have relationships, they like it, they want to be in a relationship, they seek it, they run after it. And then it seems like once they have it and something else happens for them, and then they want to get out of it, but they want to pursue another one because there's something which that like a hit, which the ego is getting at the beginning of it, that it wants to repeat. But yet, if you stay in a relationship, it goes through its ebbs and flows, like all of life. And sometimes, we just want to stay with the highs, but when the lows come, we want to get out. So that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would we continue to do that?
Right. But the Course in Miracles teaches us that relationships, or special hate or special love relationships, are the ego's favorite tool to keep us from our own spiritual awareness. It projects onto us the idea that if we have this person, or we have that group, or those are the popular ones, if we're a part of that, if we can take that, then we're going to be happy. And of course, we know that no one else can make us happy. Our happiness has to come from knowing who we are.
Okay, so that's one very important thing to know. And then the other thing with ego that's a little bit like slippery. For example, if you have a relationship with different people outside of yourself, and it could be a coworker, like last week we talked so nicely about the different levels of relationships, and it could be one of those, they're not really part of your big life, but they come into your life every now and then. And sometimes these people trigger in you like a feeling or a sensation that they don't like you, like you could be in a group setting and it's like you don't know what you did, what you said. And so you also instinctively kind of like feel that energetically, and then you also want to reflect that back. Well, if you don't like me, I'm not going to like you either. And I have to say for myself, like I still work on that a lot. Like if I feel somebody doesn't really like me, like why should I even bother to like you? So what would you say about that kind of ego thing? Because it's hard when you know that you never did anything and you're trying to be friendly to that person, but they keep showing you this like, I don't like you, and so why would you bother to be there?
Well, it's interesting what you say, because you can feel energetically, which shows us that we are, we can feel energy, which really speaks to us as being more of a spiritual being than the physical being, because you can sense that. But as we've spoken before, egos like to trigger egos. And so in Eckhart Tolle in Power Now, he talks a lot about the pain body and how a pain body will trigger another person to open up their pain body, because that's how the ego is fed. And so what if I watched that, or if I could sense that was happening to you, my advice to you would be that their ego is calling upon you to say if it can get you to play. And to that can be simply, I don't want to play in that garden. I mean, it's non-productive. So it's okay if you don't like me, because what you really don't like is some part of your own personality you're projecting onto me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's what,
but in the moment, that's hard for a little human being to to understand and try and get, because we're so used to, if you don't like me, well, I'm not going to like you. Because like you said, the ego is like to play. But I also know that we talked about this last week a little bit as well, when you said about how you just have to, sometimes it can be the person is just calling out for love. And so you try to like keep your heart open and show them love, but they still just blocked off, like, whatever situation is going on for them. And my other question around that is, like, for example, each person has their point of view, and it doesn't matter so much what the other person is doing. If my point of view about you is in a way, then you can never be anything different to me. So what about that situation? Because that person is making up their mind that you are like this, and it has nothing to do with you. You are not like how they think. It's their point of view about you. What do you do in that situation?
Well, the Course in Miracles talks about this, and it says that we make ego structures around every person that's in our life, every relationship, everyone. We have formed a perception based on past, and that perception based on past might not even totally be connected to the individual that we're creating the egoic persona for. It could be, if someone is treating you and you could feel that they're defensive to you, or they're blocking you and they don't like you. It could be that when they were a small child, they were in kindergarten, and there was your African, that they had a friend that was really mean to them, and they don't remember that memory.
Well, that makes total sense.
It's triggered in, because the ego hangs on to those memories. The ego hangs on any upset that we have, and it forms itself around that. And so the person could not consciously even know that they're doing it, but they're going, I don't like this woman. I don't like her. But it has nothing to do with you. It has to do to the past conditioning that they were through, that they're now projecting onto you, and they're responding to that as if it was happening now. And of course it's not.
So what could you do as the person that's kind of like, in a way, experiencing that? Like, what would the Course of Miracles advice be to?
There's two things going on here. The first thing is that they're reacting to your physical, something about your physical. And of course, we're not our bodies. We have bodies, but that's not what we are. We are spirit. We are light. We are love. So if you're awake to the level that you're awake, you can say the person's having a reaction to be like to my car. You don't like my car. You don't like my car. It's fine. I don't need to close my heart to you because your heart is currently closed. I can open your heart through leaving my heart open, even though you've closed it to me. So the Course in Miracles would ask us to ask for a miracle, to look for the light in that person, and keep attention on the light that they are, so that they can find it within themselves.
Yeah, well, that's very advanced.
Well, it's not that it's easy.
Listeners, are you out there hearing this information? If this has happened to you, or like, I could put up my hand, it's happened to me a ton of times. I'm sure it's happened to everybody. But okay, this is very big. This is like a huge step, because in the moment you feel hurt, and in the moment you want to defend, and in the moment you want to go with your ego, and like you said, play with the other ego. But actually the only way out, and the best way out, is what Moreah just said. Can we keep our hearts open, and can we let the light, and can we just see the light in them and just keep projecting the light? And then eventually it'll dissolve their walls and their ego, and they will see their mistake. Because at the end of the day, if that's what they are doing, they are seeing it only about themselves, isn't it? They are hurting only themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so the Course in Miracles always says you can only solve the problem by raising above the problem. So if we think of the ego, at a certain horizontal level, the only way that we can transform the ego, which is transforming within ourselves, because if we're triggered, if someone's acting like they don't like us and they don't really know us, and we're triggered by that, there's a lesson there for us. That's why it's And the Course in Miracles says there's an opportunity there for forgiveness. Forgiveness of what? Forgiveness of the ego. That's what we're forgiving. We're forgiving the ego within ourselves, and we're forgiving the ego of the other. And so that's, like you said, it's advanced work. And I said, but it's the only work that we have
very advanced. This is very advanced, because in the moment we are so used to acting in the way that we have since childhood, really. Because if I think of my personal experiences around this kind of situation, it's always, it hurts you, and you just want to, when you hurt, you want to strike back. But that doesn't make it better. That makes it worse.
Well, and it doesn't hurt you, Deb. It hurts your ego.
Yeah, exactly, because you are not your ego. So don't be confused. I love it.
Yes, that's the important thing for us to recognize. If we're triggered or defensive or hurt, it's not us. You're feeling the pain of the ego.
Oh my God. And the whole thing could be so simple if we just recognize that. Like life is, like I've read so many times when people say, oh, life is beautiful and life is good, you know, and then sometimes you think like, really? Because all I can see is this. But I think when that transformation happens from the inside out, then we can experience exactly what you're talking about right now.
Absolutely. And it's by practice. You know, I know that early on, when I first began with the Course in Miracles, I would be triggered by many things all the time. And it almost, I mean, you couldn't go to sleep for a second because there would be another shock. And then I realized that all these wounded feelings and being a victim and all of these things, that wasn't really me. That was my egoic structure. That was the ball of all the past hurts that I'd had and projections that I'd made. It was just that. And I could look at it and I could let it go. So I've become much better at taking criticism, whether constructive or not, by recognizing what this person is saying is about my ego. It's not about my spirit. And therefore I can overlook it.
Wow. That's amazing. Like right here in this moment, this information that we're talking about here, if you allow this, if you practice this and allow this to land into yourself, then you can really be free in your life.
Absolutely. You know, and the whole work of the Course in Miracles is to help us remember who we are. We are spirit, we are light, we are thought, we are everywhere. We are incredibly powerful, loving beings.
So how do you think, did we forget? What do you think happened? Like you said earlier on that we just became separated from God, but how did we forget?
Well, the Course in Miracles speaks to us in saying that we actually fell asleep. And in the Bible, it does too, that Adam fell asleep. And Course in Miracles would agree with that saying, well, what fell asleep? Our higher mind, to the awareness of what it was, fell asleep. And then the lower mind, or the egoic mind, started to run a story about what we are that we're not.
That we are not. So do you think that's the representation of the story in the Bible with Adam and Eve, and when they took a bite of the apple, they saw that they were naked? So is that the lower ego mind then that became awakened?
Absolutely. So then the lower part of the mind, like the Course in Miracles says, quite literally, says that the world as we see it doesn't exist. It isn't there. It says that your mind, the lower part of your mind, is so powerful, it is projecting a universe that doesn't exist in the way that you see it. And so we are literally incarnate as a baby, and we are living a dream, a 70 or a 90 or 101-year-old dream of what we are not. And we are here to remember what we are. But if we truly remembered fully what we are, we couldn't even stay on the planet. We would vibrate our way right off of the planet, because level of awareness is when we have no more purpose of the body and the learning of the body. And you know, the Course in Miracles tells us that our body is a communication tool for the mind, that it is to be in service to the mind. And we've made this mistake of not identifying as mind or spirit or light. We identify as a God, as a body,
and thoughts
and trapped in time and space.
Yeah.
Course
And
says no.
that makes a little bit of sense, because I mean, since I was a young child, the thing that always boggles my mind is how everything is constantly changing, right? Like it's like there's this, nothing is the same. And yet, as human beings, we try so hard to keep everything the same as how we like it. And then when these things like death and separation and those things and disasters, you shake us up a little bit because we can't repeat this old story that we projecting, then we get all out of sorts. And also, usually most people, when these big events happen to wake them up from their dream, which means, oh, now this disaster came and my house is gone. Oh, now death came and my husband is gone. Oh, now, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of the time, some of these big things that kind of, throw us off a little bit actually helps us to remember who we are.
Absolutely. And the Course in Miracles speaks to this in saying that, the ego likes a mild river of misery running through our life. It doesn't like catastrophe, because catastrophe usually makes us ask a bigger question.
Wakes us up.
Wakes us up.
Yeah. What's going on?
Those become the opportunities for us to look inside and to see more of what we are, because we discover that the physical world is the world of change. It's the world of death and birth and rebirth. But the Course in Miracles teaches us that we as spirit are immortal. We are changeless.
Eternal.
Eternally. And so when we have these disasters, they can rightly be used as tools to help us identify with our spiritual nature.
Wow, because that makes total sense when I just look at my own little life, I look at all the things that I thought was bad or that I'd regret. There wasn't many, but they were quite big things. But when they did happen, they helped to wake me up from the illusion. And then it also helped me to identify that there is a constant somewhere, which is observing all the change. Since I was probably in the womb of my mother, I remember it. And I was like, that's not possible. How can I remember that? So there's a constant. When you start to connect with the spirit, then you can connect to that constant that you are, and you start to observe everything, the change. And that's why you can also become less attached to this physical form that you took on, and your chair and your table and your house and your car and your husband and your wife and your children, because they all fall under this same category, as in changing. Your body's changing. You look at yourself in the mirror. Well, there was a version of you at 2 years old. There was a version of you as a teenager. There's a version of you, and different things happen to you. So a lot of people get stuck, since we're talking about the ego versus spirit, a lot of people get stuck in that ego because somebody did something to them across one of these timelines. But actually, you are the spirit. You are the eternal. So nothing can really touch you. Nothing can hurt you, but only your decision to become the victim, or to become, or to take on all of it was your decision. And then you can also decide to become free of that, because you are the eternal. So then really we don't have to be stuck.
Absolutely. And it's such, the Course in Miracles is so eloquent and simple, and it says to us, you are spirit. If somebody does something to piss off your ego, don't worry about it. You're spirit.
I love it. Oh my God, I love it. I feel like we've just cracked the whole thing.
Right. When we begin, it's not easy to do that. But when we do that, when we do overlook the ego in someone else, or we do overlook a disaster, and we understand it was born to be in conflict. I mean, the physical world is the world of conflict. So you can't get angry when people are operating on that level. You do have the choice. This is when we get reinstated as the decision maker. If somebody's acting out of their ego, we can simply choose, I'd rather be spirit than to play in the world of the ego, which is the world of form.
Yes, because ultimately, all we ever really want is to have peace, isn't it? I think all you ever want is to have peace. Some people think that, oh, if I have enough money to feel safety and security, I'll be in peace. If I get a husband or a wife, I'll be in peace. And so the ego is, made up all these stories that you got to have that to have peace, but we are peace. And when we start to transform all the stuff that the ego has got us believing, and we just talked about this whole podcast now, if you just take responsibility and keep your heart open, let the light, see the light in the other, because we are all one. And then you're really going to start transforming your life. And you're going to understand what peace is, because peace is something that we are, not something that we have to earn, that we have to be worthy of, because we are worthy, because we are here.
Absolutely. And you know, when we talk back to, we're referencing for you, you know, if you experience that somebody doesn't like you and they don't really know you, they're sending. So in that opportunity, you've got this wonderful gift in front of you to say, here's an opportunity for you to practice. Are you going to be an ego, or are you going to be spirit? And we get hundreds of those opportunities every day. And the Course in Miracles refers to them as miracle opportunities. So when you look at, when you are having a conflict with somebody, or something's not going your way, and you reframe it in your mind, say, here's an opportunity for a miracle, because I can choose to identify as spirit now, instead of my personality, my body, and my ego.
Wow, that's so amazing, Moreah. This is so amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I said earlier on, actually, really, if you understand this on a very deep level, you've cracked it. You've cracked the code. All you have to do is put it into practice. Don't judge yourself if you can't do it all the time. If you do it once today, and then maybe 9 times you fail, then you try again tomorrow, and the next day. And I guarantee it to you, when you make this a practice and a habit in your life, you're going to get it. And when you get it, you're going to experience that freedom, that peace that we are all looking for, because that peace is within you, and only you can activate it. Nobody else can do it.
Absolutely. And it's so important what you just said, freedom. We have the opportunity to free ourselves from the egos that are running the planet. We have a powerful, powerful gift that we have at our disposal, because freedom does come from identification. When we know what we truly are, we are free, and peace is the result.
Wow, I love it. I'm just going to leave it there. There's nothing else to say. Peace is the result. So we're going to peace out now, listeners. And thank you, Moreah, so much. I always love, and I learn so much talking to you every time. There's no end to it. Like, we could talk about this forever. We're just so grateful that for the month of August, we're talking the whole month with Moreah about A Course in Miracles, and we've got different subjects. And people reach out if there's something else you would like us to talk about. Surely we can. We've just got these 5 ones planned for August. Moreah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're on at your vacation place, and she's still making time to talk to us. I appreciate it so much. And we will be back next week with episode number 4.
Great. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.